You know, when your dad is the president of the United States, your childhood is anything but normal. But what really happens after the cameras stop flashing and the White House is just a memory? Today, we're diving into the story of Sasha Obama, piecing together the life she's built for herself, far from the shadow of that incredible legacy.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? The picture we get is pretty complex, a mix of, well, insane privilege, intense public pressure, and some things that just don't seem to add up. So let's follow the trail and try to understand how she's navigated it all from a kid in the White House to a young woman on her own terms.
All right, so to really get who she is now, we have to go back to a childhood that was, literally unlike any other on the planet. Let's look at the moments that shaped a life lived right in the center of the political universe.
So, Natasha, though the entire world knows her as Sasha, was only 7 years old when her life completely changed. Can you imagine moving into the White House as a second grader? It's wild. But her parents were really determined to keep things as normal as possible, which is why, years later, she even had a summer job at a seafood restaurant, taking orders, clearing tables, the whole thing.
And this really shows you the two sides of her childhood, right? On one hand, she's doing normal kid stuff like playing soccer and tennis. But on the other hand, every single practice is watched over by a Secret Service agent. Even the family dogs, Bo and Sunny, were basically international celebrities. It was this constant mashup of the totally ordinary and the absolutely extraordinary.
But, way before all the politics and the cameras, the Obama family went through something truly terrifying. The story goes that when Sasha was just 3 months old, she was diagnosed with meningitis. And her father's words about that experience, they're just a powerful reminder that behind all the titles, they were just a scared family in a hospital. Thankfully, she made a full recovery.
Okay, so after a childhood that was completely defined by her father's presidency, Sasha really started to write her own story. As she moved into adulthood, the world's focus shifted to her education, her career, and the financial independence she was apparently building, and some of the claims are pretty jaw-dropping.
So what's she been up to? Well, it looks like she has her hands in a little bit of everything. After starting out at the University of Michigan and then apparently transferring to Columbia, her career seems to be taking off in a few different directions all at once. We're talking modeling, writing, and even public speaking. It's like a masterclass in building a modern personal brand.
All right, let's talk numbers because the figures presented here paint a pretty remarkable picture. First up is a reported $1 million a year income from a modeling contract with IMG, and this has supposedly led to huge campaigns with brands like Dior and Calvin Klein.
And that's not all. She's also credited as the author of a best-selling children's book called Sasha's Garden, which is estimated to have pulled in another $1 million since it came out.
And to top it all off, we're told she commands a cool $50,000 for every single speaking engagement. So when you put all these pieces together, the story being told is of a young woman who isn't just riding on her family's coattails, but is actively building a serious financial portfolio of her own.
But of course, when you're that famous, that kind of profile comes with a ton of scrutiny. Her entire life is lived under a microscope, and that creates some major challenges, from her presence online to her private relationships.
And this is where things get, well, a little weird. This slide perfectly illustrates the challenge of separating fact from fiction. The very same source that calls her a social media sensation with over 92 million followers also says she doesn't even have a personal Instagram account. It's a direct contradiction. And it's fascinating because it shows just how easily rumors and speculation can get treated as truth.
Her romantic life, as you can imagine, has also been a huge topic of public fascination and, sometimes, debate. The source lays out a few relationships that each kicked off a different kind of public conversation. And that's the key thing here. These so-called controversies are all about the public's reaction to her life, which just goes to show the crazy amount of pressure and judgment she's had to deal with.
And all this public interest, of course, leads to a massive fascination with the family's wealth and their lifestyle. So let's take a look at the actual assets and net worth figures we have just to understand the financial world she's living in.
So this chart really puts things into perspective. According to these numbers, Sasha's personal net worth is somewhere between $1 and $5 million. And yeah, that's a ton of money, but it's put in context right next to her parents' combined net worth, which is estimated at an absolutely staggering $70 million. And that kind of wealth is apparently reflected in some pretty incredible assets. The sources list her own place as a $1 million-plus condo in Manhattan. And then there are the family homes, a huge mansion in D.C. and a sprawling estate on Martha's Vineyard. Throw in luxury cars like a BMW and a G-Wagon, and you get a picture of a very, very comfortable lifestyle.
But, money and fame, that's just one part of the story, right? The information we have also paints a picture of a really complex and interesting person behind all those headlines. So what do we know about her as an individual, away from all the noise?
I love this slide because it's like a rapid-fire look at the person, not the public figure. First of all, her Secret Service code name was Radiance. How amazing is that? She's also reportedly fluent in Spanish, is seen as a style icon, and is described as a talented artist, an avid reader, and a passionate advocate for social justice and mental health. This just paints a picture of a really well-rounded and engaged young woman.
So at the end of the day, the portrait we've seen is of a young woman who has handled an unbelievable life with a lot of grace, all while building her own brand and dealing with constant public scrutiny. And it all leads to one final, really compelling question. As she keeps carving out her own path, what on earth will Sasha Obama's next chapter look like?